Good afternoon once again, and welcome to third panel discussion about the provision of the solid waste management service during the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. The event's organized by NALAS network. My name is Miodrag Glušević, and I'm the program director with the Standing Conference of Towns and Municipalities, and I'll be your host for today. At the very beginning, let me introduce to you distinguished speakers that are with us today. First of all, Zorica Bilić. She's a country coordinator for the GIZ Open Regional Fund program for the modernization of municipal services. Welcome, Zorica.
Thank you, Mile. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we are very glad to have you. Then we have Mr. Vlatko Jovanovski, who is president of the Disaster Preparedness and Prevention Initiative for the Southeast Europe, an organization dedicated to fostering cooperation between the national authorities on the risk prevention in the region. Welcome, Vlatko.
Nice to see you all.
Yeah, welcome once again. Finally, we have Mr. Felix Schmidt, who is the environmental specialist. He's a director of strategy and development with the CSD engineers from Lausanne, Switzerland. The organization well recognized and also quite active in the region. Welcome, Felix.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Of course, I wish to introduce you also to my colleague Boran Ivanovski from the NALAS, who is going to be a co-moderator today, and he's going to be helping me through this panel discussion. Welcome to you, Boran, as well.
Thank you very much.
Very important announcement for the beginning is that this event is being recorded. Other than that, other technical details I want to share with you is that only the panelists and the moderators are allowed to use video and microphone functions, but we wish to encourage you to actively participate in this event by posing questions or comments through Q&A and chat section that you can find on the bottom of your screens. In order to make this event as interactive as possible, but also to get to know you, we are going to introduce so-called poll questions, with which we want to find out your opinion on certain issues and topics, which we can use either for the later discussions, or also we will use it for making conclusions of this discussion that we are going to share with you afterwards. So at this point, I would like to ask Boran actually to bring up the first poll question. Okay, with this one, we introduced ourselves to you. With this one, we want to see actually who are we talking to, and see what is actually what are the organizations that the audience is representing. Do we have the results? I think we will have them in a second, but in order not to lose time, okay. So, okay, we have quite good, I would say, mix of organizations that are represented, which is good. Thank you very much for this one. So the topic of today's discussion is resilience of the services. In other words, we will be talking about the capabilities of the local authorities and public utility companies to continuously provide waste management service during the time of crisis. We will use current corona crisis as a basis for our discussion, but we are not going to stick solely to it. And now, before I go into the discussion with my guests, I would like to ask Boran to immediately bring us to the second poll question, with which we want to find out how do you perceive the risks in the region of Southeast Europe, and which of these given answers you find as the greatest risk in the region. Okay, we will have the results in a second, but since we don't have too much time on our hands, I will go right into discussion now. We have seen on this list that there are many risks that the region is facing, but we usually think about them only when they occur. But there is one organization that is thinking about the disaster risks and their prevention all the time, and this is DPPI. And therefore, I would like to ask Vlatko maybe to introduce us to the greatest, to introduce us to the topic and share with us which are actually the greatest risks in the region, and how does the COVID fit into this pattern. But before I give floor to Vlatko, we can see on our screens the results of the poll question, and I would say that the answers are not unexpected. With all the floods that we had in last 6 to 10 years, this response is not really a surprise. Thank you very much for that, and Vlatko, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Miodrag. Thank you, NALAS, for inviting me today to this webinar and for the offered opportunity to speak on the topic. Definitely, looking at the banner, I need to change my photo. I guess time passes by quickly when you're dealing with disasters and disaster risk reduction. But let me get back to your question. First of all, allow me to say just a few key elements on disaster risk assessments. Actually, in disaster management, the role of the risk assessment is very crucial, and actually the most important pillar in prevention and preparedness policies. Today, all of the countries in the region, in our region, are having this type of documents, these assessments. They are having them completed, or they are working on updating them, because it's a constantly evolving story around disaster risks. So although there is a lot of science behind risk assessment, and they are all different from each other in sense of methodology. For example, the earthquake risk assessment is different from the methodology that is used for floods risk assessment. So this is acknowledged that it is a scientific process behind them. They should never be considered as prognostics or forecasting tools, and this is very important to be acknowledged and to understand in the beginning. With the fact that we have included floods or forest fires or a pandemic in our national risk assessment as a major risk, it doesn't mean that we know when they are going to happen. Risk assessments are usually tools that we use to recognize what is out there and assist us as governments answering three basic questions. What can happen? How likely is that to happen? And what will be the impact if the risk materializes into a disaster? The second point that I would like to emphasize is that how do we use the actual risk assessments, and this is also very related to the current pandemic. So we use the risk assessments basically in order to inform and create general awareness among our population about disaster risks. Secondly, we use them to create strategies and policies that will address the root causes of those risks, and in that way to reduce them, to mitigate them, or to prevent them. And the third point is to inform our rescue services so that they are better prepared for a response. From what I know, there is no national disaster risk assessment in the region, which is not including a possible pandemic outbreak. Ever since the SARS outbreak in 2002, then the MERS outbreak in 2012, countries are constantly considering pandemics as a possible threat. So the key question here is, yes, we have envisaged the event in our assessments, but what have we done previously in order to be better prepared when the crisis actually materializes? So there is a lot of that discussion going on, not only in the region but globally, and I'm looking forward definitely to the outcomes of those of that debate, which will definitely give us some hints in which direction should we go to in order to improve our systems. So going back to your questions about what are the major risks, disaster risks that the region of Southeastern Europe is affected, the easy answer is earthquakes, floods, and forest fires as the top three hazards that the countries are facing. And I think that the poll that you have just recently conducted is showing showing that. However, the reality is not that straightforward. In the past 10 years, the European Commission is vigorously trying to motivate and to engage the member states via the Union Civil Protection Mechanism to invest more in risk assessments. So there is a lot of work done on guidances and trainings and policy level in order how the different nations can excel in risk assessments. But it doesn't go so smoothly because each country is different and they are all using different types of methodologies how to assess disaster risks. So we cannot find a comparable model in order to compare the countries based on their disaster risks. So the middle solution from the European Commission was that beginning from 2015, on every 3 years, each member state should deliver to Brussels its summary of their national risk assessment, in order for the European Commission to have a kind of an overview what are the main risks that the region is facing. Okay, so. If I may share the slide, yeah, sure. This is, and I'm going to conclude with that, just to for the audience to see, yeah, and this is the outcome from the overview of major disaster risks. Overview from the European Commission. So from 34 countries that have submitted their summary of national risk assessment, 30 are saying that floods are the major hazard, followed by extreme weather, industrial accidents, forest fires, and then you see pandemic is also here. So,
yeah, thanks Vlatko, for this comprehensive overview of the risk, especially risk assessment. Before I go on, I have a question which actually also coincides with the question coming from Sanja from Montenegro, and it's about the role of local authorities. Maybe just short, to give us a short, and what is actually, Sanja is asking, what is actually the level of governance that is more adequate to run the civil protection service?
There is no model, Miodrag. Every country has its different history, different type of how they govern the civil protection part. But nevertheless, it is anonymous that the crucial importance of local governments in disaster management. Everything starts on local level and everything finishes on the local level. This is why we cherish very much the cooperation that we have started with NALAS, because we are how to say, killing with one blow two flies. First, as regional organization, we are having a regional overview and we can influence regional policies. But on the other hand, we can tackle a really local level issues that are related to civil protection and disaster risk management. So there are a lot of tools, and also there is a lot of knowledge created over the years in our region that can help us together as regional organizations to support local municipalities as much as possible. So definitely localization, because every problem it starts over there and ends over there.
Thank you. I mean, this was really a great response, and I'm really happy to see that participants are also exchanging among themselves. And I see respond to Sanja's question from Nenad Sharonic, which is great. I mean, this is kind of interaction that we want to foster and like to see. Okay, but moving on now to more specific issues related to waste management, I would like to switch to Zorica. Zorica, there are numerous definitions of urban resilience, but all of them basically revolve around the ability of social and ecological systems to absorb disaster shock and retain the same basic structure and way of functioning. In your opinion, as a country coordinator, what is the resilience of the utilities and especially waste management services?
Well, thank you, Mile. Yes, you are completely right. There are many definitions because resilience seems to be the new buzzword. Lately, in Urban Development Dictionary, it is almost as much frequently and commonly used as the word sustainability. Everybody speaks about the necessity of building sustainable and resilient municipal services. However, and of course, it's not without the reason, because if we think about public utility companies of the future, both sustainability and resilience make the ground rule. Nothing can be counted as sustainable if it's not in the first line resilient. As today's discussion started with the discussion about the potential risks that we are facing in the region and worldwide, of course, with urbanization, globalization, climate changes, migration, etc. More and more frequently we are experiencing different threats and risks. So it's not a question whether these challenges and whether these events will occur, because they certainly will. The question is how society, and in this case our waste management utilities, will react to these challenges. So if we use the boxing terminology, what is resilience? Resilience is the ability that you stand strongly on your feet while being punched in your face. So for a utility to be resilient, it needs to withstand and quickly recover from any potential disruptions or any potential punches, if you like. There are couple of 3 to 4 key elements when we are speaking about waste management utilities and their resilience. So first factor to resilience is the ability of the waste management utility to absorb the initial shock of the potential extraordinary or hazardous events and to continue with the operation. So here we are speaking about the awareness of the utility on their vulnerability and also preparedness level, how quickly they react to those challenges. So here, the key element are organizational capacities of the utilities, whether they have prepared any procedures and processes, any strategic plan for such events, whether they have set all the contingency planning in place. Secondly is the ability to skillfully manage the crisis. So if we speak about the COVID-19 pandemic, if we reflect only to this, how leadership, also organizational capacity, being that they have health and safety procedures in place, but also how leadership is skillfully managing the utility, not only to protect their own staff, of course, this is the first line of priority, but also to prevent the further increase of the infections. And third, which is currently very, how to say, in the loop, the ability to recover quickly and to continue the operations. And here we are speaking about dealing with the issues of liquidity, also organizational, individual, but as well as institutional capacities. So how good relations they have with central level government, local level government, because without their support, in most of the cases, then they cannot survive and quickly recover from the events that have recently occurred. There is a fourth thing that I would like to highlight. The fourth factor of the resilience of the utility is the ability to learn and to incorporate lessons learned from the past into the future actions. So there are a number of great examples, good practices of waste management utilities from the region and worldwide, how they dealt with this situation. Let's reflect to COVID-19 and being able to share these experiences, and this is exactly what we are doing today, and to be able to learn from them. That's the key element of building the resilient utility.
Thank you, Zorica. Yeah, thank you for these thoughts, and especially this regarding the ability to learn. This is something that we don't have the chance to actually hear often, although we know that learning and education and is very important in every aspect of human life or society. So, which actually brings us to our next speaker. So, Felix, the CSD is providing consulting services in the number of environmental related fields, waste management and contaminated sites being one of them. So in your experience, what have you learned from your experience? What are the greatest risks for the waste management, and what are the most important resilience factors for this kind of services?
Thank you. Firstly, if we speak about risk, we should probably define which kind of risk we are speaking about. I think two big things. The first one is environmental risks, long-term risk for the environment. And on this side, we are speaking more about the quality of the treatment of the waste and to stop dump site and to protect the long-term environment. This is one of the main risks of the waste management. But I think here we are speaking more about the continuity of the service for the population, for the quality of life of the people, and to ensure a minimum service during a crisis phases to the population. The factor for this resilience in a crisis and also in the long-term operation of waste management, I think in the crisis phase, the most important resilient factors are the money. We need to have enough money to buy fuel and tires when necessary, and to make the maintenance and to pay people. And this could be quickly a problem. The human factor, sure that we have to manage the operation, the daily operation, with probably a difficulty to have enough people to do the job, to organize, to plan all the daily operation in a difficult situation. And we need to face technical challenges also. Probably we have to buy a fuel every day, and so to be sure we have enough material to operate, to maintain the trucks, and to make also to get the security material for the workers, and this is a big challenge in such a rush time of crisis. We have also a management, very important management effects in this time, where we have to manage the company, even if some are ill or are not able to manage. So we have to organize the company in order to take all the decisions necessary day to day to make the operation function. Another very important point is also the communication capacity, because in this time of crisis, we have to communicate a lot, to communicate with the people, with the workers, to communicate with the authority, to define the minimum services that we can do or we cannot do in order to face to the situation. And we have to communicate with the population in order to communicate good practices, and how will the service be affected by the crisis, and how to ask the people to react to this situation. And this is also a very interesting and also very difficult point in such a crisis. On the long term, resilience factor for waste management, I think there are a lot of things, other things which are important. Most important is the money side. How to make that we have enough money to provide the service every day and every month of the year. And this has to go to come with the capacity of having a good register of the clients, which is very difficult usually to population, but also businesses, and how to make a billing system function, how to make the money recovery system function in order to have enough money to cover the cost. This needs also to make a budget, to have negotiation on this budget with the authority, budget linked with the quality service and objectives of the service. And this is also a very important long-term resilience factor of the service. The other challenges I saw in a lot of municipalities is also the stability of the management of the company, public or private company, because the waste management is a topic you don't learn at school normally. It's quite difficult to find possibility to know how you manage a waste company daily or nightly, every day to operate it. And it's very important to have a certain stability in the management. Important that the management doesn't change in each election, for example, but have a continuous expert resilience team in the operation. Independence of the company is also a very important topic. Independence in the sense to have his own budget, to be able to buy quickly tires and fuel and all articles necessary for the company. We cannot wait 2 months to buy tires because it's a complex process to buy. So this independence in the management of the money is also very an important factor of stability. After, I will say that we have also in a resilience factor to the legal problems that most of the times I saw legal objectives much too high and not in the level of what the people can pay for. And when the politician or the international politician organization and fix objectives too high and not in relation with the capacity of the people to finance the service, this give also very big difficulties and block the evolution of the service. It is sure that to have ambitious objective in environment and service to the population is important, but we have to consider step-by-step approach, realistic, that allow the quality of the service to be improved, but also the people be able to pay for the level of the service. And this is, I think, one of the bigger challenge in most of the country.
Thank you, Felix. I mean, it's obvious that you know the situation in the region. I mean, you pinpointed so effectively all of the issues that we are facing day to day. But you also very well elaborated all the let's say precondition factors for the resilience of the service. And this goes very well with our next poll question, which I want to ask Boran to put up at this point, where we want to find out from our audience which preconditions they see as, and which are missing, they see as a key for the resilience for the services in the region. And while we are waiting for the results, I also want to thank you for bringing up the issue of effects to the environment. This is a very important issue. We usually, when the crises come, tend to put aside these kind of issues and topics. Of course, the social problems are very important. The economy is very important, but then, you know, the environmental and climate issues usually, let's say, so to say, suffer in this kind of situations. And finally, before we see the results of this poll, I want to just reflect on this, what you have said about the customer base, a very important question, and one of the bigger problems for the public utility companies in the region. And this, Zorica knows very well, we cooperated on these issues together with NALAS in recent past in scope of one of the GIZ projects. Okay, so we have the results. I see that lack of finance is actually perceived as the biggest issue for the resilience of the services, but some other also factors are there. So this is very interesting. But moving on, I would like to ask Vlatko, actually, with the experience that we have with the COVID-19 crisis, what are the plans for the DPPI? What will be the response in the coming period in terms of planning, strategy shifts, or future activities? Do you have anything at the moment that you can share with us on these issues?
Yep. Thank you for that. Just allow me a few sentences to reflect a little bit on Zorica and Felix, because there is very important issues, especially Felix, which, as you mentioned, he tackled all the gritty details of the challenges on local level. And when you have this type of very technical, very practical challenges, and then somebody like me comes and speaks with the mayor about the concept of resilience, you know what will going to happen? You just come and introduce another concept, another buzzword that goes from this year and goes to the other year. So basically, we as experts, as regional organization, we need to kind of shift a little bit even the language and adjust a little bit our goals, our visions to the local level challenges, to try to speak with their language, because resilience is if everybody is doing their business as they should do. It is about sustainable development, it's about education, it's about social policy, it's everything. It's not only civil protection guys with uniforms coming with the law waving in the air and saying, if you don't have a contingency plan, I will punish you or write you a charge. So we need to kind of be a service provider to these local communities. When we are speaking about DPPI and the future plans, of course, everything has changed with the pandemic. The current annual work plan of the organization is put on hold, and actually, in the moment, we are revising what we can do in the next half of the year. DPPI is a organization which is actually driven by its member states. So we have 10 member states, 10 governments, 10 civil protection authorities, and we have this rule of consensus that we need to agree what are we going together as a family, what are we going to do in the future. So last year we started a process of designing our strategic development plan, and it was supposed to be endorsed this year, but due to the situation, it is put on hold. But nevertheless, this strategic development plan is actually tackling 3 areas of our interest that will be in the future. It is not only related to the COVID, but in general, because I mean, in disaster management, we always say we are preparing for the last year's snow. So if we overemphasize now on COVID, we will forget about the forest fires, we will forget about the earthquakes, and we will forget about all the other obvious hazards that are going on. So our strategic development plan is based on our training program. So we have an annual training program which is designed around 10 to 12 different type of events which are going on together with the member states and with our international partners. It is about project management, how to support the member states in successful projects, but also how to continue good regional projects that have stopped. Because we have often seen the practice when the music stops, the show stops. This is the basic problem of all projects. And there have been good projects on a regional basis that have good results, and they need to be continued. And this is our role as a regional organization to see which components of those already successful projects can be continued. And the third element is what Zorica mentioned about learning. Resilience is about learning. DPPI is, as I consider it personally, a learning organization, and we need to learn from events. Therefore, we are going to invest a little bit more in academic research about topics in disaster management, to find better links with the academia, and finally to produce good analytical regional tools that will help the member states to excel in their efforts. This is why the partnerships with organizations such as NALAS are very important, because the input that is coming from the grassroots level is crucial.
Okay, thanks, Vlatko. The last point that you have made, so the input from the grassroots level, I'm very interested in that one. So we are talking about the local authorities, how can they contribute, or do they contribute to your work, and are they involved? Are there mechanisms to involve because there are different also good examples in the region of the local initiatives, but also regional initiatives. So the municipalities in the catchment areas coming together, doing the planning for the flood protection jointly. Also on the different sides of the border in some cases. So how does that work with the DPPI?
In the moment, I cannot say that we are on that satisfactory level that the grassroots or the local level is represented in DPPI. And again, emphasizing the importance of cooperation that we started with NALAS in order that voice to be heard, because DPPI is mostly governmental organizations or the leading institutions on civil protection / disaster management of the member states. But nevertheless, I can guarantee that all of them, as civil protection authorities, they recognize the importance of the local level. And what we can do definitely is to find those champions that have produced really good results with minimum finance and with minimum capacities. The city of Kraljevo in Serbia. I don't know, city of Zagreb was affected by an earthquake during a pandemic, which is a sui generis case worldwide, which can be explored. The city of Debar in Macedonia was under a lockdown for 14 days with only one employee of the civil protection forces organizing the whole operation. So there are a lot of things. Turkey, for example, it's on a daily basis affected with different types of disasters, landslides, forest fires, so whatever.
Migrations also.
Migrations,
yeah.
So there will be new threats, new emerging risks that will showing up for which we have not anticipated or we are not prepared. But if we have the link, if we have the network, if we have a learning culture, I think we will be better prepared. And this is our role as regional organization to send this type of signals. First of all, to find what are the champions, who are the success stories, because they are very contagious. If you present the city of Kraljevo, what have they done on local level in Slovenia or in Bosnia and Herzegovina, people are saying, okay, we can do this because
if
somebody before us
course.
have done it. So we need to use that as much as possible. This is our tool for advocacy.
Excellent. And, and this is just to illustrate how important is the collaboration between the organizations and between the different levels of governance. But you also mentioned contingency planning as in your discussion. So I wanted to ask Felix, how does he perceive the contingency planning in general planning for the maintaining the necessary level of waste management and environmental services during the crisis? Felix?
Yes, thank you. Yes, waste management is a logistic process. We have to manage every day a new challenge to clean the city with people and with mechanic, with trucks and bins and so on. So this needs a lot of planning. And I think if the planning, if the day-to-day planning is well organized, we can make the service very efficient, cheaper, and also much more resilient, because in such a crisis, it's just an adaptation of the planning. We have to plan every day the situation, considering the data we have, and we should adapt very quicker than usual, but it's all a planning process. And this planning needs to understand, considering the situation, the people we have, and the reality of the disaster coming in, to see, okay, what is the minimum service we can provide today or this week, and how we can, which routes can we take, which frequency should we reduce the routes, reduce the frequency, And after very quick, we have to plan the work of the day. Same with the people. We have to have planning of the people monthly or weekly, but every night it can change due to the crisis, and we have to adapt, look for other people, and to have a B plan for every position in the organization. As I mentioned before, we have to plan the communication. We have to see, okay, each week we have to communicate with the mayor, or each day, each week with the population, each day with the workers, to give them the rules, the security rules, the hygiene rules, and to communicate very often in a crisis period. And on the same time, we have to plan all the furniture, the fuel, and all the maintenance, in order to be sure that the system functions. And to make such a planning and to make it efficient, this needs the data. And on the other hand of the planning, the supervision and the reporting of the situation is very crucial also. This should be organized in a normal time, in order to be able, when the crisis arrive, to have the data about the people, the data about the kilometers, the data about the time of the routes, and so on, to have the data necessary to take the good decision, and to organize the crisis to make it as good as possible. And I think, yes, planning and supervision and reporting are the key elements for to be able to survive to such a crisis. Nobody knows 3 months ago how to organize the crisis of the COVID. You know, now we have all learned a lot, and we had to adapt our work, our job, to the situation as best as possible.
Thanks. Yeah, we have heard the last time how some of the POCs actually manage this organization of shifts and other processes. Yeah, thank you for these inputs. I want to ask Zorica at this point. I mean, we have heard that actually organizational resilience includes all of this planning and management of people, processes, communication, resources, infrastructure, facilities, procurement. So how to actually create and maintain the resilience of the service in the region? So we're referring to the Southeast Europe, overburdened with the structural and day-to-day problems. Do you have any answer for it? It's a tough one, I know.
No. No idea. Yeah, well, in order to transition to more resilient utilities, first of all, or more resilient systems in general, first of all, you need to optimize the existing system. So we cannot speak about the resilient water utility when the utility has a number of issues, unsustainable practices, inefficiently doing business. So it's not, we cannot build the resilience. Yeah. We can invest in contingency plans. We can invest in procedures. We can invest in all level of processes. But if the utility doesn't have sustainable practices, and it does have inefficient practices, we cannot build the resilience. So there is two sides of the coins when we speak about resilience and sustainability. So it's not only that resilience is part of sustainability, it's also that the sustainability is part of the resilience, if I may say so. So if it's not only how we react to these extraordinary events that are and threats that are occurring, and they will occur. It's also how to minimize that our unsustainable practices increase the potential that these events outburst in the future. So there are two things. You have mentioned, Mila, and both Vlatko and Felix mentioned a lot of processes that needs to be improved within the utility. You have also mentioned the project that we have recently did together. Both you and Boran were cooperating together with us on that. So we have struggled very much in order to find, because the project for the audience was about designing advisory services for improvement of waste valorization and collection. And we wanted to find some processes that needs improvement or business process reengineering. And we struggled very hard to find only 5. So we could tackle everything, being route optimization, customer basis you have, and Felix has mentioned that as well, cost centers and tariffs, introduction of innovative and sustainable practices like composting, primary separation, etc. So if we connect it to the pandemic, so with the utility that doesn't have a good customer base and doesn't have a proper efficient practices in terms of tariff collection and cost centers. Once these events occur, if they don't have from the very beginning good percentage of payment with the reduced income, there must be a problem with liquidity, and they cannot fight it. Yeah. So without the support of local government, I remember that from the beginning there was a question from audience. Yeah, what about what issues the utilities could not resolve without the support from local government? There was nothing that they could do without support of local government. Immediately, when they had the initial liquidity, they have addressed local self-governments in order to help them fund not only the services, but also everything additionally that they needed, the equipment for protection, disinfection, etc., etc. So in order to invest in resilience, we need first step needs to be to invest in the efficiency and sustainability. And then we can easily, step by step, transfer to more innovative practices, more adaptive capacities of the utilities. But without efficient utility, there is nothing we can do.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that was a question coming from Sanja from Montenegro. I hope that we managed to cover it. The question was about the example of utility in the region that faced the problems and had to turn to the local government for support. And I think Zorica covered this question. So we have like seven more minutes for the questions from the audience. Before that, I would like to ask Boran to bring us the fourth and the last poll question. Thank you, Boran. So the question is about the contingency planning and how do we perceive do our utility companies actually have the contingency plans, although they are envisaged by the law usually, but it's not always the case that those plans exist or are usually outdated, you know. So this is just to see how you what is your perception of this issue. So while we are waiting for the results, yeah, this was kind of also, I would say, expected. Yeah, small number of utilities have the contingency plans. This may or may not be true, but the fact is that there is a lot of space for additional learning, training, cooperation, and building resilience in this respect. I also see that our participants have been communicating between themselves. This is good. I see that Sonia Popovic was also replying to the previous question about the relation between the national and local level. But since we have additional, I would say 5 minutes, and I don't see any questions from the audience, I would like to ask Vlatko. You already mentioned the possible cooperation in the future, but how do you see importance of this cooperation with NALAS, but with also association of local authorities on this kind of issues?
As mentioned earlier, there are a lot of tools out there that can be used and that are actually designed for the local level. So we can start from there. This year, United Nations strategy for disaster risk reduction, Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, to be more precise, is having the first target monitored. This means that target E is to be reported by the end of the year. Target E of Sendai framework says that we should increase the number of national and local disaster risk reduction strategies. So on short term, we can work on that. There are tools how to design local disaster risk reduction strategies. There are funding opportunities for the local municipalities how to be supported in that process. Also, I know that ISO, the International Standardization Organization, is developing a new standard on local resilience. So there will be an ISO standard on local resilience. Therefore, there are many pathways that we can use and many tools that we can use from a regional level to push the energy towards the local communities. I think that with a carefully designed partnership agreement between DPPI and NALAS, we can put the agenda forward for supporting the local municipalities through the national associations of cities.
Excellent. Thank you. I see a question coming for Felix from the audience, and the question is, how will in your opinion, how will the solid waste management services are gonna look like after the COVID-19?
Oh, yeah, I think it depends a lot of the local situation of each country and cities. What to say?
Yeah, I know.
I think I think the main topics after this crisis is to redefine realistic objective in each local situation, to see, okay, what is really possible in the next possible time, which money can we have from the citizen and business, which will be affected by the crisis, and with realistic fees and taking into account the possibility that part of the people will not pay in any case. So to make a realistic budget for the next year or the next months, and to adapt the operation to this budget, to reduce probably temporarily the objective, perhaps to make less recycling and to focus to the basic service to the population, and trying to reduce the effect for the environment, but to reduce the objective to a realistic possible minimum services.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. We are really now close to the end, but we have another question or comment from Sonia Popovic, and I will direct it to Zorica because it might be, let's say, in her courtyard. So the question is that we do need some kind of guidance and support for the contingency planning. Yeah, I mean, both for the PUCs and local governments. So is GIZ planning something in that respect?
Not to my knowledge that we have particular projects on contingency planning guidances related to that, but since we have a wide range of the projects which are now oriented towards the building of the resilience of the utilities, I'm sure that we can have also some sort of guidances for the contingency planning for the utilities and local self-governments. But also we are always investing, and once again I would like to highlight that, in the exchange of practices. So the exchange among the utilities in the region, exchanging good practices, also good practices in terms of contingency planning. I'm sure that we can find something in our region and not that far. So this is something that we will definitely invest and support the utilities from the region in future.
Thank you, Doris, for this. Also, at this point, I would just like to say that there are some praises coming from the audience, which is great. So you were great. The panelists, the audience was great. Also, I want to thank you all for the patience and being with us throughout the entire event and the entire series of events, since this is the third and the last one that we planned. I want to thank NALAS for organizing these discussions. I think it was a great idea. I hope that we all lived up to the expectations. And finally, once again, thanks very much to Vlatko, Felix, and Zorica. And we will be sharing the conclusions from this discussion very shortly after this one. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.